Hey there, I am Christie Ruffino, former broke single mom turned CEO of 2 six-figure businesses and best-selling author with 15 books. But it wasn't always like this. Not long ago, I was a hot mess. Yes, I did a lot of things right, but mostly I was throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what would stick. Fast forward past many failed attempts and a few incredible victories, I not only get to share what I've learned along the way, I get to bring together top influencers as they share their empowering stories, insider secrets, and valuable resources that can be used right now to step into your power. So, if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, or possibly one in the making, and you're looking to create a business and life that lights you up, well, then you're in the right place. Hey there, this is Christie Ruffino, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Mastery Unleashed podcast. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you. But I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping you've been a long-time listener and you're just as excited as I am to hear today's show. On our podcast, we talk about all things related to entrepreneurship, small business growth, and scaling your online business. Our guests share their stories and their strategies, and they all have a free gift to help you implement some of their wisdom right away. And today is one of those days. I have the pleasure of interviewing a longtime friend and business associate. We met in Chicago almost 20 years ago, or I should say in the Chicagoland area, almost 20 years ago. And I have watched this person take their idea and stick with it and become an expert above anybody else in this industry. My guest today is JD Gershbein. And he has been at the forefront of LinkedIn conversation since 2006. He is one of the world's first independent LinkedIn consultants, and he is a pioneer in LinkedIn education. Everybody seems to be jumping on the LinkedIn bandwagon lately, and he is somebody that isn't jumping on the bandwagon. He created the bandwagon, and everybody's trying to keep up with him. JD serves ambitious professionals who want to strive and make their mark in the digital age. And even more so now, since the last few years, what we've all experienced, that is so much more important because there's a lot of noise out there. And JD's wisdom and his expertise and his experience is going to help you rise above the noise in LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's get on with the show so you can see how special this guest is and how much you're going to learn from everything he has been doing with his clients for almost 2 decades. So let's get on with the show. Welcome, everybody. I am so excited for you to meet today's guest. I have known him for, well, I would say, I thought it was almost 20 years, but in our pre-conversation, it was like around 17-ish. And I have just seen him evolve just a little bit, but stay in his lane and has just become known as the expert in this field. And you're going to hear about what that field is in a moment. But welcome, JD. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Christie Ruffino, Master Story Activator. I'm now
Yes.
someone I can say that I've done your podcast.
Yes. And I can say that I've reached it as well, that I've got JD on my show.
Oh, stop yourself. We're just two people talking.
Yes, we are.
About
We are.
LinkedIn, by the way.
About LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. The secret. The cat is out of the bag. You all know.
There you go.
What we're
There you
talking
go.
about. Yes.
Breaking news.
Yep. Oh, on air. Like we've got the little sign. If you could see his background, we've got all these awesome things in his background. We got on air. So we're live on air with Christie Ruffino and JD Gershbein. And we are going to be talking about all things LinkedIn.
And there's plenty to choose from. Where would you like to start?
Oh, should we start at the beginning? No. So yes, we're going to start at the beginning. Like, how did this happen? Like, where did you just wake up one morning and think, oh, I'm going to become a LinkedIn expert?
Yes, ever since I was a child, Christy, growing up in Wilmette, Illinois, I told my parents, careers in medicine and law, and they sound great, but I'm going to be a LinkedIn specialist. And in a perfect world, that's what might have happened. Obviously, at the time I saw LinkedIn, which was December 2006, so I'm going to take everybody back in a time machine with me. I was just another marketer. I mean, there was no personal brand conversation. There was no social selling. We were right at the headwaters of a great recession, and the economy was tanking. And I was doing a lot of networking. And at one event I was at right around the holidays in 2006, before everybody was going to break, I leaned in and saw a couple of my colleagues on their laptop looking at a website. And I asked, well, I asked what you would have asked. What the hell are you looking at? And they said LinkedIn. And I didn't know of it at the time. Did my homework on it that night, created an account, kind of really looked at these text fields that I had to supply information to create my first profile, and really took the time to do it. I think that's what really rewired me, was that I was putting myself out here on a website that was not my primary website, but that was something that, if all went well, I could create enough interest in who I was and what I did that it would get people to a website. So I set my first LinkedIn profile up for my marketing business. At the time, I was writing website copy and marketing collateral and helping people get to the top of page one on a Google search for their name or their business. So that was really the start. That's where I got my exposure to it. But it happened very quickly after that, Christy. I answered a call of leadership. I went all in on this, and it was around the holidays, and I just deep studied my way. And first of 2007, I was out there as a LinkedIn specialist.
I think I met you before then in our networking paths, but I do remember seeing you at one of the chamber events being the featured speaker, and you taught. I remember taking notes. Because LinkedIn was new. I really didn't know how to use it. And you were the first person that kind of got me excited and informed on how to create a LinkedIn profile.
Well, a lot of things had to happen for me to have that speaking opportunity. And I basically started talking it up. What else could I do? I was into it heavily. And there were enough people who were around me who were curious, and they would nudge me at events and they say, JD, I'd like to learn more about this LinkedIn thing. What exactly are you doing with it? So I would kind of convene people in coffee shops, and we'd all bring our laptops and we'd all kind of figure it out together. Those were my first facilitations. And I was learning right along with everybody else, but I was seeing things. I was, as crude as the site was back then, it did not look anything like it does today.
Completely different. Yeah.
It looked very, very primitive, but at the same time, it was there. All of the foundational aspects of creating a social media profile were there. But in the case of LinkedIn, it was much more robust, because we could bring in all areas about our business, our work history, our education. It expanded to include groups that we were in, associations, organizations. So there was this just whirlwind of activity that I set myself into. Every day I was meeting people and talking about LinkedIn and introducing myself as a LinkedIn specialist. And that led me to field the question that really changed my life and my career path. And that was, JD, how much do you charge to write a LinkedIn profile? And from there, I knew I had a career.
Yeah, it was perfect. Perfect. Because, social media has evolved and LinkedIn has done a great job of keeping up with the technology around it, but it's still known as the go-to place for professionals,
Yes,
right? People in
yes.
corporate and entrepreneurs who are looking to connect with other professionals, not that,
Mhm.
Facebook and TikTok, and there are professional people on there, but there's a reason why people gravitate towards LinkedIn. And if you're not doing it right, you're not getting the results.
In the early days, Christy, it had branded as a job seeker site, and it still
Yes.
has a bit of that residual branding to it, because there are plenty of people who say, well, I don't need to be on LinkedIn. I have a job and I'm happy in this job. But I think that as we saw LinkedIn turn the corner, especially right as we got into the 2010s, it had shed a lot of that job seeker cachet and it moved into business development. And that's where I have always focused. I've done numerous programs for professionals in transition and still do in the executive marketplace. But LinkedIn has become the most profound instrument of business development known to man. It has accelerated relationships. It has shortened sales cycles. It has put sellers in front of buyers. It has put the people we need to meet the most right in front of us. And that's been the most astonishing innovation of all.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a quick break because I want to get into some of these strategic questions. Um,
Strategic questions.
yes, because I want you to be able to shed some light to my audience about how they can kind of, leverage LinkedIn themselves and just glean some of your wisdom. So hang tight, JD, hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. This is Christy and JD, and we are talking about LinkedIn. And I met JD. He shared in the beginning how he got interested in LinkedIn. I met him in the Chicagoland area, and I know he is known very well in that market because I lived there many years. But he has expanded the local territory. Of course, it's a social platform, but he is known globally as an expert on LinkedIn. And lately, everybody seems to be popping in and saying, I'm a LinkedIn expert because they're jumping on the bandwagon. But JD has been with this since the beginning. He's honed his craft. He knows it inside and out. And I'm excited to learn a little bit of some of his wisdom.
Well, aren't you nice?
Yes. Okay. So we've already talked about how LinkedIn has gone beyond
Yes.
job seekers. It's business development as well. It's all things, right? If we want to connect with other people and build relationships. And what I am seeing a lot lately, not from you, of course, spammers, right? People that are just sending me these random messages. Hey, how's your week going? Like, I don't even know who they are, but I know if I reply, they're going to now like sell me something, or they're selling me right off the bat. And so what we want to do is not do that. We want to do the right thing. So what are some of the right things to do on LinkedIn?
Well, let's backtrack to what you said coming out of the break, and that is, you're right. There has been a tremendous influx of professionals who have decided that they want to cash in on the LinkedIn gravy train. And when I started out, I was in blue ocean territory. I still feel like I'm in blue ocean territory because I'm the only person in the JD Gershbein business. But as LinkedIn skyrocketed and as use of the site went past all these milestones, 100 million people, 200 million people, 300 million people, and climbing, more and more people decided that they wanted in. And I understand that. Look, it's free enterprise, and it's a huge pie, and the more the merrier, so to speak. But it also has become hyper competitive, and it also has become contaminated, because you've had so many people who have turned this into a lead generation fest. And we have seen the rise of predatory sales behaviors and unethical communications and surreptitious sellers and the ugly side of digital marketing, as I call it. And with all we hear about developing trusted relationships, it's amazing to me that people still connect under the guise of lead generation and doubling and tripling and quadrupling the amount of leads you can fill in your pipeline, and 10x your income and deliver massive results, when in fact, the truth is, folks, the unadulterated truth is that it takes work, that there is no turnkey system, no magic bullet, no cookie cutter approach. It requires time in front of your screen, critical thinking, connecting with people, approaching them respectfully with the goal of not selling them anything until you develop a relationship. And once the trust is there, well, ideally a business conversation could follow. But in the early going, you're right. The invitations from people who just want to add you into their funnel, it's mind numbing. And I find it offensive, intrusive, and annoying.
Oh, you know what? All of those, all of the above. And what really makes me kind of chuckle is when people reach out to me that don't even know who I am. They've done no research on me, and they're telling me that they can help me, accomplish some sort of goal, like, and they want me to hire them to get more clients. And right away I'm thinking, well, if this is your tactic for you to
Yeah.
get more clients, why would I want you to use that tactic to help me get clients? Like, it goes beyond my belief about building relationships.
Well, that comes right out of the square peg into the round hole sales academy. And they're trying
Yeah.
to sell you a product you don't want or need. They haven't done any homework on you. They haven't, quote unquote, qualified you as a prospect, but they
Right.
feel that everyone with a pulse is in the market for their product or service. And
Yeah.
I think, if anything, what have we learned from the pandemic? As I sit here with you today, we are coming up on our third year anniversary of the onset of the pandemic and sheltering at home and leaning into the online world. And I saw this early into the pandemic, Christie, where there was just a feeling of desperation and survival on the part of our fellow professionals, that they were just
Mhm.
trying to sell to create an income. We were all devastated by what was going on. And fortunately, I didn't have a storefront or a brick and mortar business, so I didn't have to close my doors. But in fact, I got busier than ever during the pandemic. But I just found it very disheartening what I was seeing, that people would resort to this kind of aggressive sales pitching and just bypassing the whole process of building relationships.
Okay. So let's start with some good strategies.
Good strategies. That's all
Yes.
I have is good strategies.
Yes. I think, doesn't it start with making sure that your profile and all of the components of your profile are the way they should be?
Spit shine,
Spit shine.
ready for prime time.
Yes.
Of course. And what have we learned since the onset of LinkedIn? And as they've upgraded their platform, they have really brought out the vibrancy and branding of the LinkedIn profile. And we have this golden opportunity to create on this amazing canvas. And why so many people default to sales pitches is beyond me. Again, continuing that just this attitude towards selling. A profile is a central core, a nucleus of information about you that folks base their decision making on. And that means that if they're your prospects, there should be something certainly that addresses their pain points. If there would be connections, they address the potential of collaborating with you and what that would look like. If they're going to be mentors or just good folks in business that you perceive may be clients someday, you want to have that information formatted in such a way where it's a compelling read, it's believable, you appear down to earth, Nobody cares that you're an Amazon.com bestseller. Nobody cares that you made President's Club from 1996 to 2003. Nobody cares that you've keynoted all over the world. They just care about what you can do for them. And that is missing on so many profiles.
Yeah.
So strategically, we must orient the profiles toward the ideal client avatar, but at the same time, put ourselves in a position where it's easy to retrieve and recall us as the solution to a problem.
So how do we do that?
Great question. Well, you retain me for starters, but for people, and you avoid chat GPT programs and automated intelligence programs.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit later.
We will, but at the time of our recording, it's still a manual process where you do have to do the deep dredging and flesh out the best possible narrative to make the best possible impression. And what does that mean? That means, again, putting yourself out there as truly organic and real and playing to your strengths. I think what makes a great read about someone, it's not that they've got all these products in a service catalog 6 pages long. It's about how they work with people to bring out the best in them and move them forward, improve their competitive position, enhance their outcomes. And that's what I talk about in my profile and in the clients that I bring on board. It's all about improving their outcomes and getting into engagements with people where they feel a sense of alignment and fit. I think that's big, especially with the incredible increase in coaches into the mix. Got a lot of coaches and consultants and advisors and people who have moved from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial space, and they need clients. How do you get clients? It's hard to get clients. And some people scratch and claw for every client they get. And that's where the profile becomes strategic, is setting it up for the read, for the demand, for the interest.
I love that. Okay. All right. So now we've got our profile spit shined, if you want to call it. It's like ready to rock and roll. It's aligned to our perfect ideal client, and they're going to read it and lean into us, right? They're going to think, oh yeah, I really like what this person's doing. Maybe they can help me. Like they're connecting on that organic level.
Yes.
So
I think there's an implied call to action too. Many people in the trade will insist that there be a call to action, which is kind of salesy, please contact me at. That's all I have on my profile. I think that if your profile is compelling, it's a notch away from impelling. Compel holds people, impel motivates them to some action. So ideally generating interest, piquing curiosity. And if people are in the market for what you provide, ideally you have given them enough on that profile to motivate them to investigate you further. It's tough to learn about people in some of these profiles because it all sounds like they walk on water in these content sections, and there's no mention of where I fit in as the client.
Right.
But I think that when you are intentional, great word these days in business, and when you are disambiguous, where you have really eliminated all the vagueness about what you do and you articulate well, you're in the game with people. That is strategic, and that is the overarching strategy of LinkedIn, is to make yourself presentable. Forget about the how. The how comes when you realize that it's not about just ramming a sales pitch down someone's throat. It's really about positioning yourself in the mind so that when the conversation moves to your product or service category or your skill set or your industry, that you're the one that comes up. That's the challenge. There's no easy answer to that. Can't do it on a 45-minute podcast. That's something that becomes the work. And on LinkedIn, I speak about the work, and that truly is the work. Finding out enough about yourself, stripping yourself down to the bare, and getting that narrative that's going to move the needle for you in business.
Okay. So you're recommending no specific call to action, but have it be a more organic, like just an email address?
I just put my, please reach out to me on DM.
Okay, so
On
just DM.
phone.
Perfect.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that I'm not sure there's anything more than that at this stage of the game, only because people are more of a discerning buyer. Uh, you're not going to get someone to just
No,
impulse buy you at this
like
stage of
whip
the
out their
game.
credit card, right? Because you
That's
reach out
right.
to them.
That's right. There's got to be some conversation, some intermediary. My call to action is typically a 30-minute Zoom call.
Mm,
I I orchestrate beautiful Zoom calls with people. I like to find out about them and I like to meet them where they are. I don't come at them with any kind of sales pitch. It's very relaxed, no obligation. I just want to learn about them. And I
perfect.
offer that on LinkedIn. That's where it starts. It's got to start with a conversation. How else could it
Yeah.
start?
Absolutely. For me, I don't know if we're switching gears, maybe not. For me, I've been doing a lot of virtual networking lately. And when I meet somebody in that event or,
Mhm.
one of the breakout rooms, I will go and vet them on LinkedIn. To me, I'll do Facebook, LinkedIn, check out their website. I want to know a little bit about who they are beyond that, initial interaction.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if this is wrong. You can kind of tell me if this is wrong or not. But then I will reach out to them. I'm perfectly okay, you guiding me in the better direction. But I'll reach out to them on LinkedIn with a voice memo, not text, like not that. I just feel that the voice is a little bit better, really short, and just say, hey, I would love to have a Zoom call with you. Like it's just no agenda other than getting to know them a little bit better. If I feel there's some sort of alignment, either I can support them, whatever that looks like. That's kind of my strategy, is using the voice memos on LinkedIn to be able to set up that or initiate that Zoom call.
I think it's fantastic. I think there should be more people who do that. First of all, it's a novel approach. It is not typically the messaging can be very powerful and it can work to your advantage, but voice memos, video memos, these
Mm.
are few and far between, even though there are a lot of people espousing them. I do it at times. I sometimes, for the sake of my schedule, I don't have time because I'm such a damn perfectionist. If I do a voice memo, I'd want it to be perfect before I send it out. I want it because it's a brand piece, and it does position you. It calls attention and positive attention to you when you do things like that. So I think that's highly strategic, and I'm sure it converts well for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we'll get on the call and I get to know a little bit more about that person, because I mean, from my perspective, I don't want to invite somebody to work with me if I don't feel they're a good fit, and I don't
Yes.
want to waste their time, right? So it
Yes.
just doesn't, it to me, I feel that taking this extra step helps everybody be more successful, and who knows down the
Yes.
road what's going to come of it, but either way, it's a little
Yes.
bit more of an investment, but pays off.
Well, there's this conversation that's always running in the background regarding LinkedIn, and that is from people who want to stand out. They want to
Mm,
build a brand. And when you do things that are out of the ordinary and become extraordinary, you are standing out. You're doing what other people on LinkedIn won't do. That's just the umbrella term for standing out, because there's so much clutter and there's so much white noise and there's so much junk. I'm the first guy to tell you that it's no different for me. My homepage has the same amount of crap that I've got to filter through and get to the gold. And that's where the time comes in. And that work again is finding out how you're going to set your engagement strategy, being dynamic on the site. People that work LinkedIn very well have a huge cognitive capacity. You've got to be able to really multitask and sift through an optical field and find things that work. And sometimes getting to the people you know and supporting them on LinkedIn, and doing things that set you up for good decisions does take time. And that's where I provide thought partnership, and that's what I do these days. And there's nothing overtly strategic about it. It's just being a communicator, meeting people where they live, arriving from a place of collaboration and co-creation, and not trying to square hole or square peg and round hole them with your product or service.
yeah. All right. So I know LinkedIn has a few resources. I think they've got their newsletters,
Mhm. The creator tools.
articles. There's all these different things that I've seen pop up and change and
Mhm.
evolve. Are there any of those that you feel are a good use of our energies?
It's incredible. At the onset of the pandemic, we were all becoming broadcast stations, it seemed, because we had all of these media outlets available to us within LinkedIn. That was LinkedIn's grandmaster blueprint scheme was, hey, we're going to keep people on our site as long as we possibly can. So they gave them LinkedIn Lives. They gave them LinkedIn audio events, which really was a dovetail off of Clubhouse. I think
Mm.
LinkedIn has to be kicking themselves that they weren't first to the audio event game, and Clubhouse kind of won that. But I believe that Clubhouse is dissipated. I'm not on it anymore. I've gone to a few LinkedIn audio events. I think that with LinkedIn Live and LinkedIn Audio, you kind of have to intersect as those events are going on, because I'm not really sure how many people are accessing the archives to listen to conversations. Everything's kind of primacy, recency thing on LinkedIn, but the newsletter is where I feel LinkedIn users have their greatest opportunity to build a brand and really get their voice out into the LinkedIn jet stream. And
Mm.
I do a newsletter. It's called the LinkedIn Style Guide. I advance this notion of LinkedIn style, which I think supersedes the personal brand conversation. And I see the newsletter as the crown jewel in the LinkedIn creator toolbox, because you're intersecting people when they want to intersect with you. Now, let me explain. It's a subscription-based vehicle. You don't subscribe to any of the other vehicles. You have to opt in to get the newsletter of someone, which tells me right away it's a beautiful thing. It means that, Christie, if you're writing a newsletter and I'm subscribing to you, that should signal to you that I want to consume your content. And
Yes.
I will be notified when you publish an edition of that newsletter. So it's there, it's waiting for me, and I can read it on my own terms. And I think that's the beauty of it, is you can use that content to intersect with people when they want to see what you've got, when they're ready to read what you're offering. And then you can also use these pieces to market yourself in a follow-up message. I typically am writing pieces in my newsletter that are more gateway and evergreen in content, so that I can say, hey, Christie, we just spoke about this in our Zoom call. It just so happens that I wrote an article about this. I'd just like to share it with you. I hope you'll have the time at some point soon to read it. And when you're polite and you really approach people from the the place of requesting
Serving.
their advocacy and service, they'll read it and they'll share it.
I love that. So we'll make sure that we have the link
Mhm.
to the LinkedIn style guide in the show notes below. So you guys can all subscribe to Jane's newsletter.
Well, that would be sincerely
Mhm.
appreciated.
Yeah, I know. I started one a while ago and but didn't continue with it because I wasn't sure of the
Mhm.
effectiveness of that. And so I love that you're recommending that that's a good use of my resources and obviously everybody that's listening because it's
I
hard to
love the
know.
newsletter. I love the newsletter.
Yeah.
And, I've watched enough LinkedIn Lives to know that, some of them are quite boring and mundane, and I'm not getting much out of them. They're nice
Yeah.
background. I mean, I'll listen to a conversation. It's almost fly on the wall type stuff, but the audio events, I they were great at the start. I thought this was cool. It came at the right time. We were all indoors. Pandemic was raging on, and I could listen to this as I walked my dog and multitasked or worked out. But with reading a newsletter, which is really a direct route into the frontal lobe and memory center of your brain, and the learning systems taking over, and people really get to hear what you're all about in a newsletter. I think
Can you
it's
put a video into the newsletter? Can you
you
add
can
one?
indeed. I have a video in
Okay.
all of my editions. Absolutely, you
Perfect.
can. You can't embed. It's not set up to embed podcasts yet. I'm hoping that that happens, because I did try to launch a podcast through the newsletter, and it was just a little too much work, and it takes people off the site, which probably would be recognized by the algorithm, and they would suppress the
Yeah.
reach of that particular edition. So at some point, I would hope that there's a little bit more of an integrated audio component.
Yeah, that would be great.
Mhm.
Because that's where my brain was going, thinking, I've got these amazing guests. That's like ready-made content to put out there
Yes,
every week. But all
yes,
right, well, hopefully
yes,
they'll get on that bandwagon soon.
yes. Well,
For us podcasters.
the interesting thing too is that we're seeing a lot of people getting into newsletters and kind of bringing subscriptions to us. So getting people to subscribe and enroll with you, these are like the big terms in professional development, community building. And I believe content builds community and community begets content. And when you
Mm,
are putting your best stuff out there in front of your community, where you're kind of shifting away from this thing we call a network and into more of an active community and micro communities within the community, you
mm.
really start to find your tribe. You really start to see your content advocates, your evangelists, your the people who support you, the people who follow you in
Mhm.
spirit, not just in name.
Right, because you're bringing together a bunch of people that are all looking for the same outcome, and you're providing that to them in a free way with all these free resources, and it just helps them
Mhm.
kind of like make those little baby steps forward on their journey, and they love that. And so that's, you know, a great way to build a tribe of brand advocates.
Absolutely.
All right,
You're so
so
correct, Christy. You
yeah.
continue to be correct. Your level of correctness just keeps going.
All right, well, let's get into the correctness of the free gift you want to share, because I know we shared a lot of great information here, and you are gifting your time to our audience, which I think is very generous. You are giving people a free LinkedIn profile assessment. So you want to tell us a little bit about what that would entail?
Yeah, and it should be noted that it's not intended to be a critique. So I've often been approached by folks who want me to look at their profiles and give them some kind of feedback or critique, and I don't really do that. I don't harp on mistakes or blunders or omissions that people make, because I think it's negative learning. I really do deploy positive psychology in everything I do. And I think it's important to let people know that they are on the right track and that they are doing well. And we're all works in progress. I mean, who hasn't used that quote in professional development? And 30 minutes with me can be spent any way you'd like. I can look at the profile. I can tell you what maybe should be there, but not having gone through a process with anyone, I'm not sure I could go deep with recommendations, but certainly with syntax or semiotics or languaging, yeah, I'm happy to provide some feedback and insight. But most importantly is, does the profile look, and is it formatted in continuity with what you're trying to provide out there in the real world? As long as the versions match, you're on the right track, which means that your product and service offering should be congruent. If there's anything that's pursuant with your story that's been left out, we try to find that in a single session. So I do some things that can lead to immediate refinements of the profile. But then I can also talk to people on what they're looking to accomplish out there in the interactive space, what kind of content they want to write, what they should be producing, what they should be looking for, when they should post, how they should post, where they should post.
So, a question I have for you, just so I have clarity and for the audience as
Mhm.
well, because there's a variety of users on LinkedIn. As far as your ideal client, the people who you can get the best results for, is that the job seeker? Is it the business that's looking to utilize LinkedIn correctly to, have a better, more congruent brand and build relationships?
I think I align with people who are much like myself. They are betting on themselves to win. And those people could be executives, they could be entrepreneurs, they could be physicians, they could be advisors, They could be high-performing salespeople. Typically at companies, I'm brought in to train. I'm typically put in rooms with the senior officers and the client facers. So anybody that needs to be front-facing in the business world, where the decisions on them could be made on a singular profile, those are people I prefer to work with. People who are coachable, people who like the idea that there's something behind the effort they're putting into LinkedIn. I think there are a lot of folks who are still looking for the 10-minute a day hack workaround on LinkedIn. I'm not the 10 minutes a day on LinkedIn guy, but I am the person who will jumpstart you, make you accountable, have a little fun in the process, but also hold the carrot over you and say, look, if you work this, it's almost impossible to not make good things happen. And I'll keep you on the right path.
I love that. And so everybody that's listening, and if you've listened to the whole show,
Congratulations, by the way, if you have.
Yay.
Holy cow. And stayed awake, Christie, if they've stayed awake.
Well, we're not that boring. But anybody that's listened I'm hoping, been able to understand JD's heart. Like, I know who he is, and I know that 30-minute session is not meant to be a sales call at all. It's just meant to serve. But say somebody did grab one of those free times that you're gifting and they decided, okay, JD, I really need more help. Do you help people one-on-one? Do you have like a group program? Do you have online courses? Like, tell me and the audience how you work with your clients.
The best results I can deliver in the business world are one-on-one or in group coaching situations and in corporate training scenarios. So yes, the answer is yes. I'm best served when I can be with someone, say across the webcam or across the room. And yes, one-on-one engagements, group coaching, LinkedIn best practices for their teams, all of that. But in engagements with me, my process is immersive, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's for people who truly want the deepest dive possible on LinkedIn, and they're willing to put themselves into the process of finding out who they are as a professional and really installing themselves, implanting themselves, superimposing themselves on a platform that has shown to deliver results for business.
Okay, and I have one more question. I could probably ask you a ton more, but I am not in the corporate space. Never have. Don't speak that language. I'm only looking at this from an entrepreneurial perspective or small business owner. But say if there's a HR manager right now or a CEO, somebody that has a team of people, would it be a sales team that you could make the biggest help for? Tell me what that would look like in the corporate space.
Yeah, I'm not a classical sales trainer. I'm not the guy that's going to come in and adrenalize a sales team, but I'm going to make them think, and I'm going to make them rethink LinkedIn. I like to speak with folks who are on the front lines of community outreach, people who have a front-facing role inside a company. And these are people who are typically customer experience folks, account managers, where relationships and business development are important aspects of the job description. So that's in the corporate realm. And obviously in the C-suite, more and more the profiles of senior executives are being reviewed, say in a business valuation model, in an M&A, in a consolidation or expansion scenario. So I think CEOs and other members of the C-suite know that the eyes are on them and that they are the stewards of the company's story. And even though they may not work LinkedIn like an entrepreneur, it's important that they be represented well and that their powerful profiles are there for people who are trying to network in with the company. It can be a competitive advantage in the war for top talent. If the leaders look great on LinkedIn, if the company is doing the right things on LinkedIn, that bodes well for the culture.
That's a really good point, especially with what's going on in the job market these days. And everything is kind of shifting, where at one point it was hard to find good talent. Now there's talent that are rising to the top. And so to be able to make sure that company looks really well to get that good talent in there and keep them is really important.
Yeah, since COVID hit, and we've had this great migration, the great resignation, the great downsizing, call it what you will. There are so many people who are in the mix, and professionals are more nomadic than they've ever been before. And candidates can call the shots.
Yes.
Employers want people back in the office, but the candidates have they're ingrained now, these practices of working from home. They would like the idea of working virtually so they can be with their families. So the candidates seem to be able to have more stacked towards them and bigger negotiation chips. So if the company looks good and it's enticing, because we know the eyes are on LinkedIn. I mean, my gosh, the use of LinkedIn has just gone off the charts in the last couple of years since the pandemic hit. And we're making our decisions based on the information we see in these profiles. Going back to your original question right out of the break, is why the profile is so important, is because it tees you up for those types of decisions and helps build a brand, helps shape the culture, help create an organizational vibe that says, come work for us. We are progressive, we are forward thinking, we treat our people well, we put people first.
Yes.
And I think that's what companies are trying to do. As for individuals, highly competitive. My gosh, consultants, coaches by the boatloads have hit LinkedIn with many of the same types of profiles. They're writing books, they're launching podcasts, they're designing online courses, they're doing TV shows, they're doing this, they're doing that. The next shiny thing that comes along, they'll be doing that as well. So
yes.
Where's the differentiation? How are they moving beyond what the page can provide them? Well, that's the challenge of LinkedIn. That's the daily fight to stay relevant.
All right. Well,
all right.
this
Shall I
has
keep
been
going, or
great.
should we stop there?
No, this is really great. Okay, LinkedIn, the next frontier.
How about it?
Yes, and if you want to grab a time on JD's calendar for a 30-minute Zoom LinkedIn profile assessment, make sure you check the show notes in whatever platform you are listening, because we'll make sure the link is there. And you will also be able to connect with JD, of course, on his LinkedIn profile, because his is stellar, of course. Subscribe to his newsletter and just build a relationship one step at a time. So,
well, why not? And tell him Christie sent you.
Yes, tell him Christie sent you. All right, JD, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. Any final words?
Well, that's been the beauty of the work I do, and this kind of what goes around comes around thing. We have always been on each other's radar, Christie, and when you asked to guest on your podcast, didn't have to think, just said yes. And great to see what you've achieved in your business life as an author, a podcaster, a speaker, a leadership developer. That you have really put it together very well, and you're an example for those you serve. So thanks for having me on, folks. Thanks for listening, and I'll give it back to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, JD. And thanks everybody for listening. If you learned anything, I'm sure you did, everything you learned, all of the notes you took, take a moment and share them, or think about who you're going to share them with, because we will retain more if we teach others. So that's my first ask, is to make sure that you get the best out of this show by engaging in that way and passing it on. And of course, if you like our podcast, please go to whatever platform you listen and give us some love, show us some support, whether it's just to give us a thumbs up, honest feedback, whatever it is. The more feedback we have from our audience, the better chances we have of continuing to get on amazing guests like JD. So thank you, JD, again. And thanks, everybody. We will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Mastery Unleashed podcast, where we believe that everyone can have the business and life of their dreams by turning their mess into their greatest message and following their purpose to help the people who need their newfound wisdom and resources. To learn more, visit masteryunleashedpodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review to this show.